And per usual, the Hollywood campaign against guns continues. Next month, Comedy Central is planning a special show focused on guns, and here's a preview.
As every third think piece will tell you, we are a fractured country. And when it comes to guns, the debate is as heated as ever. Thankfully, on June 11th on Comedy Central, I, Jordan Klepper, solve guns through an ingenious strategy of rubbing elbows, embedding with the militia, driving race cars, and shooting big-ass weapons till a bit of sanity returns to our country.
Miss.
You don't have to keep saying miss. Just a little over a week ago, our nation's gun divide was on full display in Atlanta, where the NRA held its national convention. A perfect place for me to selflessly reach across the partisan line and get NRA members pumped to watch my special. Who doesn't like common sense approaches to gun violence? You're for closing the gun show loophole, right? You're a smart guy. So what is it that brings 80,000 gunners to Atlanta?
It's just fun to look at all the stuff and see the people that you've seen in magazines and on television.
This is like Comic-Con, but for death.
Because I'll just have to take your word for it.
Bingo! What are the fanboys excited about this year?
It's kind of cool to walk around and see all the new products that come out and the new ammo and stuff like that.
So 2017 is going to be a good year for guns.
Oh yeah.
What was your favorite shooting of 2016?
2016, honestly, watching like Shane Cooley and those guys. Like
Was he Denver or?
No, it was out in Utah actually. They had a big Utah.
Was it a mall or?
No, what do you mean?
Where was the shooting?
It was at. It wasn't like a shooting like that.
School?
No, it was like a tournament. You know, like.
Oh, I'm doing a special where I claim to solve guns.
Solve guns?
I'm solving guns.
What does solving guns have to do with it?
Well, you're gonna have to watch it.
June 11th. That's the date. June 11th
June 11th
on Comedy Central.
on Comedy Central.
I just hope it's not comedy.
That's me. Guns Don't Solve Problems. Jordan Klepper solves problems about guns on June 11th.
Whoa.
I'm not getting through. It's time to become a sheep in wolf's clothing and give these people what they want. Guns and witty t-shirts. Who likes moderate gun stats, huh? June 11th. Big t-shirt's coming on a gun, am I right? Oh! Oh! My man. Unfortunately, common sense isn't one size fits all. If t-shirts weren't going to solve it, I would have to solve it. On Sunday, June 11th.
Our next guest is a regular contributor to NRATV, and he lives out in L.A. in the belly of the beast, Bill Whittle, and he joins us live. Hi. What's going on, Bill?
Oh, not much, man. Busy day.
Yeah, more or less, right?
Yeah.
So, oh my goodness. So,
what do you say about that?
It's par for the course. For the other side, with respect to this, they love doing this. They like to take something as serious as a constitutional right or the Second Amendment, and they kind of poke fun at it. And it serves for cheap laughs because they take the very absolute extreme perspective of it, and that's the only thing that they focus on. Anything that resembles any sense of normalcy, they completely ignore, and it's very convenient with respect to doing that. And it's nothing more than a comical propaganda piece, and I'm personally used to it at this point.
I think the guy at the very end that they interviewed, he said it's going to be on Comedy Central. He said yes. He says it's not going to be a comedy, is it? Well, fortunately, he's not going to have to worry about that. It's certainly not going to be a comedy. It's going to be more social instruction from our betters in New York City to tell us how we should be living our lives out here in flyover country. But now, look, no one's seen the new show yet, Colion, but I have seen the thing he did before this called Good Guy with a Gun, which was probably an 8-minute piece on Comedy Central. Mm-hmm. What he did was he went out to a shooting range, and then he behaved like the biggest jackass, the biggest cartoon idiot. He just behaved like no one thinks about gun owners like this.
Yeah.
You know, he's doing the gun sideways, and he's saying, when do I get to say, taste the hot steel in your mouth? You know, this kind of thing. So they build up this straw man that doesn't exist, nothing like it exists. And then when he says, boy, this sure is a little unreasonable, this position, where are you supposed to go with this? That's why I called him a coward. He's a coward because he's not making an honest argument. As a matter of fact, at the end of that segment, he has, I don't know if it was an FBI guy or an ATF guy, He said, how many mass shootings are stopped by, good guy with a gun?
Yeah.
And he said 3%. And he thinks, whoa, 3%, that's not a big number. But that's not the statistic we're interested in. The statistic that matters is how many mass shootings were stopped by a guy with a gun when there was a guy with a gun there.
Yeah.
They're just saying the total number of mass shootings. If none of them, if 3% of the mass shootings had a guy with concealed carry and 3% of them were stopped, then that's 100% of the concealed carry.
Pretty much. You know what was very funny to me and very interesting to me is how they like to underrepresent the idea of the number of people who actually use guns on a daily basis to protect their lives or stop crime. And what they don't do also is they act as if merely demonstrating a firearm doesn't count. Unless it's a shootout where a good guy shoots the bad guy and the bad guy dies, they don't count that as a self-defense gun use. They just act like it doesn't exist. And by and large, I can't think of a more dishonest representation of the conversation than that. And, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and there's an even bigger unseen force because you're basically talking about the deterrent force. And you find that some of the richest neighborhoods, just next to Dallas out there in Plano, it's a very nice, wealthy suburb. Their crime rate is, I think it's 1% of the Chicago per capita.
Yeah.
Why is that? If that's where all the rich people are, that's where all the good stuff is. Why is there so little crime out there? It's because criminals know that pretty much every single house in Plano's got everything from an AR-15 down to a pointy stick. And they're not idiots, these predators. They understand where the opportunities are. Predators have to take out the weak and the sick and the old, Colion, because if a lion gets his teeth kicked in by a zebra, the lion's finished. He's done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know what? I have to ask the question sometimes, like, at what point do we start attributing responsibility to the audience, right? Because you and I have problems with shows like this because it seeks to misinform the conversation and change the conversation to something that it's not. And then you have people who don't know very much about the issue and then walk away thinking they do after watching something like this. But at what point do we stop and say, you're responsible for understanding the difference for a false authority and an actual authority on the subject matter? I guarantee you that I could tell just by the way he was shooting the firearm that he didn't know much about firearms, but yet he is presenting himself as an authority figure on the issue, even though he's kind of living in what I like to call the plausible deniability satirical zone of influence, so to speak, right? And they do it all the time. It's like, oh, it's just comedy when it's advantageous to them, but then when it's not.
Yeah, that's right. They put the clown nose on. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. And that drives me absolutely mad, but they continue to do it, and we allow them to continue to do it. But, where do we sit back and say, okay, look, people, come on, like, you can't be this naive and you can't be this mentally lazy and taking up a conversation about a subject like this and then expect to walk away with it with more information and think that information is actually plausible. I think I really want to hold people accountable, but I know that I can't, right? And it's incredibly frustrating. So it's like you and I and people like you and I have to go out here and counter messages like this because by and large, people want their information spoon-fed to them. And we're constantly having to do this over and over and over again while not be actually moving the conversation about firearms on a national scene along any further because we're constantly having to readjust it and go all the way back to the basics and tell people stuff that they should already know, but they don't know because they refuse to take even the most minor of steps to inform themselves further about the actual topic.
I'm not trying to be clever with this answer, but if your question is at what point does the audience have a responsibility to find out what the truth is, then I'd go back to 1776 on this one. The entire idea of a republic is that citizens do not need to be controlled by the government. Citizens are an association, a voluntary association of free individuals who come together, agree on giving the government a certain number of limited powers, and the rest of it they can just keep out of our noses. The entire appeal of the progressive movement is, in fact, this is not a bug for them. This is a feature.
Yeah.
The progressive movement is about not having to think about things, Colion. That's what they like about it. They like that they don't have to think about things. They can get a guy with a hip haircut standing on television, and he's going to make fun of all of the rubes and the hicks and all the guys out there in flyover country, all the gun nuts. They don't have to think about the issue because one of their people is on camera making fun of these stupid, ignorant conservatives. They get to sit back and say, look how smart I am, look how moral I am. And there's nothing there. It's absolutely hollow. They haven't thought about it. That's why you and I know that when we actually argue with these people one-on-one, it's astonishing how fast they go down.
Yeah.
It's like that. Because they do not ever challenge anything that they're told. And this is another prime example of what they get spoon-fed.
No, it's absolutely, you are absolutely correct. It's nothing more than kind of I like to call it ideological self-aggrandizement. Like it's just, it's really not designed to move anything forward or really to like honestly explore something. It's not even like empty room pontificating. It's literally we're gonna satirically tell you how awesome and smart we are and how stupid everyone here at this convention is.
It's unearned moral superiority is what it is.
Absolutely.
It's unearned moral superiority and unearned intellectual superiority. We assert that we're smarter than you are, and all of my friends agree with me, therefore we must be. But they're clearly not. And look, the reason that they're not, Colion, is because if they had an argument, they'd use the argument.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be setting up these straw man arguments and giving us that 3% figure and all the rest. If they had actual data, they'd lead with the data, but they don't. And this isn't satire anymore. Satire requires a little bit of intelligence and a sense of humor.
Which is very true.
This is just snark.
Yeah.
Right? It's just snark. It's the cynical kind of, you're drowning in snark out here in Los Angeles. We have snark drills here at our studio, by the way. We have masks on and stuff. It gets a little too high. But snark is the lowest form of so-called comedy because there's nothing in it other than contempt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with Bill.